Scenario 7. Quality of life. Real Scene 1. Addictions. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. Carl Jung. My goal. After I finish Scenario 7, I'll be able to ask and answer questions using the phrase, how many? I'll be able to give short answers using simple present tense, and I'll be able to use the phrases, there is and there are. I will also learn about the simple past tense. With the reading material, I'll learn about addictions and how to identify them.
Introductory questions. 1. What are people normally addicted to in your country? 2. What are some new addictions of the 21st century? 3. What strange addictions do you know about? Introduction. The word addiction is derived from a Latin term for enslaved by or bound to. Addiction exercises a long and powerful influence on the brain that manifests in 3 distinct ways: craving for the object of addiction, loss of control over its use, and continuing involvement with it despite adverse consequences. For many years, experts believed that only alcohol and powerful drugs could cause addiction. Neuroimaging technologies and more recent research, however, have shown that certain pleasurable activities such as gambling, shopping, and eating can also cause addiction. In the 1930s, when researchers first began to investigate what caused addictive behavior, they believed that people who developed addictions were morally flawed or lacking in willpower. Today, we recognize addiction as a chronic disease that changes both brain structure and function. This happens as the brain goes through a series of changes, beginning with recognition of pleasure and ending with a drive toward compulsive behavior.
Pleasure principle. The brain registers all pleasures in the same way, whether they originate with a psychoactive drug, a monetary reward, or a satisfying meal. All drugs of abuse, from nicotine to heroin, cause a particularly powerful surge of dopamine in the brain. The likelihood that the use of a drug or participation in a rewarding activity will lead to addiction is directly linked to the speed with which it promotes dopamine release, the intensity of that release, and the reliability of that release. Even taking the same drug through different methods of administration can influence how likely it is to lead to addiction. Smoking a drug or injecting it intravenously, as opposed to swallowing it as a pill, for example, generally produces a faster, stronger dopamine signal and is more likely to lead to drug misuse.
Learning process. Recent research suggests that dopamine not only contributes to the experience of pleasure, but also plays a role in learning and memory, 2 key elements in the transition from liking something to becoming addicted to it. The reward circuit in the brain includes areas involved with motivation and memory as well as with pleasure. Addictive substances and behaviors stimulate the same circuit and then overload it. Repeated exposure to an addictive substance or behavior causes nerve cells in the nucleus accumbens and the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain involved in planning and executing tasks, to motivate us to take action or to seek out the source of pleasure.
Grammar Structure 1. Questions with how many. We use how many to ask about countable nouns. E.g., how many gurus are in the temple? How many rooms does the temple have? How many people do they know? Does Kevin Costner have 7 Oscars for his movie Dances with Wolves? Yes, he has those awards in his mansion. How many Kevin Costner movies do you know? The Bodyguard, Robin Hood, and The Untouchables.
Alcoholism and alcohol abuse. Alcoholism and alcohol abuse are due to many interconnected factors, including genetics, how you were raised, your social environment, and your emotional health. People who have a family history of alcoholism or who associate closely with heavy drinkers are more likely to develop drinking problems. Finally, those who suffer from a mental health problem such as anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder are also particularly at risk, because alcohol may be used to self-medicate. Signs and symptoms of alcohol abuse. Repeatedly neglecting your responsibilities at home, work, or school because of your drinking. Using alcohol in situations where it's physically dangerous. Experiencing repeated legal problems on account of your drinking. Continuing to drink even though your alcohol use is causing problems in your relationships. Drinking as a way to relax or de-stress. Developing tolerance to alcohol, having to consume more amounts of alcohol in order to get the same effect. Withdrawal symptoms such as anxiety or jumpiness, shakiness or trembling, sweating, nausea, and vomiting, insomnia, depression, irritability, fatigue, loss of appetite, and headache, amongst others.
Grammar structure 2. There is and there are. Affirmative form, singular. There is. Plural, there are. Negative form, there isn't. There aren't. Question form, is there? Are there? Short answers. Yes, there is. Yes, there are.
Writing exercise. Write each sentence using there is and there are in affirmative or negative form. A. I don't have a television in my office. B. I have some pictures on the wall. C. I have a VCR on the desk. D. I don't have a fax machine. E. I have a refrigerator in my office. F. I don't have a coffee table in my office.
Drug abuse and addiction. People experiment with drugs for many different reasons. Many first try drugs out of curiosity, to have a good time, because friends are doing it, or in an effort to improve athletic performance or ease another problem, such as stress, anxiety, or depression. Use doesn't automatically lead to abuse. There is no specific level at which drug use moves from casual to problematic. It varies by individual. Drug abuse and addiction is less about the amount of substance consumed or the frequency, and more to do with the consequences of drug use. As with many other conditions and diseases, vulnerability to addiction differs from person to person. Your genes, mental health, family, and social environment all play a role in addiction. Risk factors that increase your vulnerability include family history of addiction, abuse, neglect, or other traumatic experiences in childhood, mental disorders such as depression and anxiety, early use of drugs, and method of administration. Signs and symptoms of drug abuse and drug addiction. Neglecting responsibilities at school, work, or home because of drug use. using drugs under dangerous conditions or taking risks while high. Drug use is getting the consumer into legal trouble. Drug use is causing the consumer problems in his relationships. Building up a drug tolerance. Taking drugs to avoid or relieve withdrawal symptoms such as nausea, restlessness, insomnia, depression, sweating, shaking, and anxiety. Losing control over drug use. Life revolving around drug use. Abandoning activities that were enjoyed before.
Grammar structure 3. Simple past. Use the past simple to talk about finished events in the past. Use it to tell stories, jokes, and anecdotes. 1. Many past tense verbs are formed by adding ed to the end of the verb. Want, wanted. Start, started. If a verb ends in e, just add d. Liked, hoped. If a verb ends in y, delete y and add ied. Studied, carried. But don't do this if the verb ends in a vowel plus y. Prayed, stayed. But a lot of past tense verbs are irregular. You need to learn each one separately. Here are some examples. Have, had. Take, took. Get, got. Make, made. Sit, sat. Feel, felt.
Gambling addiction and problem gambling. Gambling addiction, also known as compulsive gambling, is a type of impulse control disorder. Compulsive gamblers can't control the impulse to gamble even when they know their gambling is hurting themselves or their loved ones. Gambling is all they can think about and all they want to do, no matter the consequences. Compulsive gamblers keep gambling whether they're up or down, broke or flush, happy or depressed, even when they know the odds are against them. Even when they can't afford to lose. People with a gambling addiction can't stay off the bet. Gambling addiction is sometimes referred to as the hidden illness because there are no obvious physical signs or symptoms like there are in drug or alcohol addiction. Problem gamblers typically deny or minimize the problem. Signs and symptoms of problem gambling. Feel the need to be secretive about your gambling. Have trouble controlling your gambling. Gamble even when you don't have the money. Family and friends are worried about you.
Writing exercise. Fill the blanks using the correct simple past tense form of each verb in brackets. 1. He. To school yesterday. Walk. 2. They. Their homework last night. Do. 3. You. Lazy last week. Are. 4. That woman. A new book this morning. Buy. 5. The janitor. The blackboard yesterday. Clean. Internet and computer addiction. The internet provides a constant, ever-changing source of information and entertainment and can be accessed from most smartphones as well as tablets, laptops, and computers. Email, blogs, social networks, and message boards allow for both public and anonymous communication about any topic. Spending a lot of time online only becomes a problem when it absorbs too much time, causing neglecting of relationships, work, school, or other important things in life. Signs and symptoms of internet addiction or computer addiction. Losing track of time online. Having trouble completing tasks at work or home. isolation from family and friends, feeling guilty or defensive about your internet use, feeling a sense of euphoria while involved in internet activities, carpal tunnel syndrome, dry eyes or strained vision, back aches and neck aches, severe headaches, sleep disturbances, pronounced weight gain or weight loss.
Research Spot. Look for more information about Number 1. Behavioral addictions. Number 2. Strange addictions. Number 3. Addiction support groups in your country.